welcome into episode 3 of Fantasy Filmball's coverage of the 33rd Annual Philadelphia Film Festival. And this episode's gonna be a little bit different because episode 1 was all about day 1 and day 2 of the fest. I only saw 2 movies, and then I talked about 2 films I saw prior to attending the festival. And then episode 2 was all about day number 3, where I saw 3 films all in one day. Well, episode 3 is a little bit different because we're talking about 3 whole days of movie watching. It's about 5 films in total, but I'm more of a little bit. I made a little bit of an oopsie in episode 1. There was another film I saw prior to the festival that I didn't really realize was playing here in Philadelphia. So let's cut to future me back at the apartment talking about this movie. Okay, so I didn't really realize that Nickel Boys was shown at the Philadelphia Film Festival because I saw it about a month ago, so it wasn't really on my radar for films to keep an eye on out for the festival. So I apologize, mega rip, that I wasn't able to include this in that selection in episode 1 of films I saw before the fest because it deserves its own spotlight. So here I am today to talk about my thoughts of Nickel Boys inside of episode 3 of my coverage at the Philadelphia Film Festival, because I have to say that Ramel Ross's feature-length directorial debut is a vital, impactful, artistic achievement. And you may hear me and say those are such big words, but this film deserves them because it is one of the most creative directorial choices of all of 2024. This film is stunning because it sparks with its stylistic and striking cinematography. It has a haunting score, heart-wrenching sound design, and bold stylistic editing choices. And it's sure to be divisive because I and the people I saw this film with were in awe, because there's these reports at every festival it shows that there are massive walkouts. They're going out of the theater in droves. And I would have liked to see this film in a festival audience here in Philadelphia to see if those rumors or those reports are true everywhere, if they're just true in small instances, or they're just very overblown. Because like I said, I saw this at an industry screening and everyone in that theater was in awe of this film. My girlfriend and I loved the movie, and I'm very excited to talk about it here today. Because Ross has this stylistic approach in his choice to present the story from dual first-person point of view perspectives, I think does alienate some audiences, and maybe that's where the reports of all of these walkouts are coming from. But I think those people who are willing to embrace it, to give it a try, to see something brand new and fresh on screen, their reward is going to be so impactful and so profound, because I found both the leads of this film, Ethan Harris and Braden Wilson, to infuse their characters with just this immense heart and this immense depth and humanity when their faces remain pretty much unseen throughout the majority of this film, because that's such a challenge to convey emotion through just your voice and the tone that you express with, because while sometimes their faces are on screen when communicating with each other, but for the majority of time we don't see their face because they're talking with other characters inside of this story, and their performances are just so smooth and they're so articulate, helping guiding us through this narrative with such clarity. But while I'm talking about this cast, the Nickel Boys is a true ensemble piece because every actor contributes in a very meaningful way. And while I may have mentioned Harris and Wilson before, I truly don't believe there is a standout inside of this film, because everyone is just knocking their roles out of the park and adding into this philosophical and enriching exploration that is the Nickel Boys. And another reason why this movie works so well is the craftsmanship that is on full display from Ramel Ross and the rest of his team. It's just mesmerizing, and I hate to compare films to other years, but I don't feel like you can truly talk about Nickel Boys without spoiling the film. So to try to avoid spoilers for Nickel Boys overall, because it's a film that recently got delayed to December to prioritize it more in the award season discussion, which I'm very thankful for because this film deserves the acclaim that I hope it gets later on down the year. I would compare this to something like Zone of Interest from last year because it echoes the way that film approached its subject matter. This film prioritizes on the psychological impact of the subject matter over the explicit depictions of just brutality that some other films may have focused more on than what Ramel Ross and his team decided to do here in Nickel Boys. Because instead of showcasing the horrors right in front of them, it focuses more on the inner turmoil and the split reactions, how of how someone would react when they see these horrors. While we don't have to see them for ourselves, we can feel the impact and the weight of just the nastiness of the unhumanity that these characters had to witness throughout their performances. Because the decision to withhold the graphic violence only heightens the emotional resonance from me and other viewers that watch the Nickel Boys. It forces us to confront the horrors that remain unseen. And there's a particular montage sequence that happens about halfway through the film that, since I watched this movie about a month ago, has lingered with me, and I think will linger with all audiences long after the credits roll. Because overall, Nickel Boys is a bold and essential piece of cinema that's certain to provoke a divisive reaction, as we've all heard about. Some will find fault with its unconventional approach and its deliberate choice of story pacing, and while others may struggle with, I have to laugh while saying this, the absence of overt depictions of violence and atrocities, because I've seen that take out there from people, and to me it's the complete wrong way to read this film. We shouldn't have to see these despicable acts taken in front of us for us to feel an emotional response. I feel like that is one of the highlights of Nickel Boys overall, is the lack of showing that heightens the emotional response of all the other technical elements throughout, because as I said, it has a very haunting score and evocative sound design that I feel like does that job for us. It puts us in the shoes of these characters and we feel the tension, we feel the scaredness, we feel the implicit bias and horrors that are lingering just beyond the walls. But I feel like this adaptation amplifies the film's themes and emotional depth. And while I may respect this film more than I adore it, because this is a prime example of a movie that you watch once and you really don't want to watch it again because it's so effective with its messaging and with its thematic themes. But to come full circle, I feel like its stylistic creativity warrants all the attention that it's been getting so far and warrants its delay into award season. So hopefully Amazon can propel this film to Oscar glory. And kind of unrelated to the film as a whole, but just talking about this ensemble, as I mentioned before, it was really nice to see Jimmy Fails and Daveed Diggs again. Those are two actors I very much appreciate. Daveed Diggs, I mean, he's been in Hamilton, but Blind Spotting is a true just performance, one of my favorites of the year that it came out. And Jimmy Fails was in The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and he was great in that movie as well. So while they're not in the Nickel Boys very much, I enjoyed seeing them pop up here inside this film. But let's dive back into my live vlogging coverage of the 33rd Annual Philadelphia Film Festival. All right, we're back in real time now, so let me tell you about what I am seeing today. Up first, we're diving into a little bit of a documentary, No Other Land. Lots of buzz here for awards and not for awards, just very important film. So I am down to watch it, you know? And then film number 2 today is called Dead Talent Society. A recommendation over from Matt, who said I would probably really like this film. Currently, he is batting 0 for 1 here at the festival because Ethos was cool, didn't love it. So I'm hoping I like this one a little bit more. So with all that being said today, let's dive into our first film of the day, No Other Land.
Important film we were showing, so I'm really happy to see a packed house. I think it is a very important part of the film, and I'm really glad you guys are here.
Movie number 6 of the Philadelphia Film Festival. Well, I guess technically movie number 9 is officially in the books, being the documentary No Other Land. And I'm not one to typically use this platform to get very political, but regardless of your stance or your knowledge on the Israel-Palestine situation, the conflict, I feel like viewing of this documentary is pretty essential. It's eye-opening to showcase the atrocities and showcase the horrors that are going on currently in Palestine. This is definitely not a fun documentary, but, and as we've been getting recently, these documentaries that are essential, that are powerful, that are showcasing so many heinous acts going around the world, and this is a new one for the list, and it's one I would very much recommend. It's one that currently does not have wide theatrical distribution. I hope someone's able to acquire the film. I hope someone's able to pick up the film for streaming, because it's a film that people need to lay eyes on. It's a film that people need to watch. And yeah, I'm happy that I had the experience and the opportunity to watch No Other Land here at Philadelphia. And now let's dive into our next film. Welcome back. As you can tell, it's a little dark outside, and I would say that's one of the positives if you live at where your film festival that you're attending is, because you can take a little 2-3 hour gap in between movies and just walk to the next one, because the next one is Dead Talent Society, and it's in a theater that is about, I don't know, 30-second walk from my apartment, because I started recording this when I stepped outside the door, and I turned one block, and this next block is where the theater's at. But I'm excited for this one. I've heard it's fun, I've heard it's kooky, I've heard it's crazy, and those are all qualities of movies that I tend to enjoy, so let's dive into this one. Alright, I'm out of my last film for the first part of episode 3 here at the Philadelphia Film Festival, and I saw Dead Talent Society, and I have to say, this movie is like a blend of Monsters, Inc., Beetlejuice, and like the Summer Olympics. A really weird comparison of films, but when you watch the movie, it all makes a lot of sense, because this film is just a hilarious, bloody, entertaining time, and it's dumb, it's goofy, but I like dumb and goofy movies, and I feel like every year at whatever film festival I go to, in the past it's been in Virginia, now here at Philadelphia, there's always one movie that I'm not expecting to love, but I go into it and I come out loving, and I think this year's film is going to be Dead Talent Society. I really enjoy this one. I don't really want to spoil too much about the film, but take those 3 examples of movies that I gave before and kind of take away what you think those films are about or what they're doing in them, and now mush them all together, and that's what you get here. What I will say is, if you're able to catch this, whether it's at a film festival or just whenever it comes to theaters, because I think Sony has this, so it should be getting some sort of actual release, unlike my surprise fave film of last year's festival being Sleep, which I think just officially got released like a week or 2 ago, is that there is a hilarious bit that happens during the credits and the post-credit scene. So don't walk out the theater. Don't be like the people here at this Philadelphia Film Festival screening who ran out of their seats as soon as the movie ended. There's more jokes, there's more comedy. It's gonna come, it's gonna happen. This movie, really good. But now, like I said, 3 films down for this episode. We still got 4 more to go, so I'll be back when it's the next day. Alright, we are back now with part 2 of this episode 3 coverage of the Philadelphia Film Festival. I have 2 movies lined up for today. We are seeing The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, the Netflix documentary, as well as Germany's selection for international feature being The Seed of the Sacred Fig. 2 films I've heard a lot about this season, and I'm very excited to dive into both of these movies. But I guess to give a little extra oomph for this video is, I saw Saturday Night earlier today just at the local AMC, and I liked it. Pretty good movie. I really love the suspense that it builds throughout, because as we've seen from the trailers and we've heard from the marketing, it's like 90 minutes leading up to the first ever broadcast of Saturday Night Live. And I feel like this ensemble works really well together, and the editing and the camera work, there's a lot of oneers, and I feel like it's kind of a meme on this channel now about how much I like one takes. And all just worked for me. I'm not gonna go too much into the movie because it's not shown here at the festival, but it's one I would recommend, and I would not be mad if it got in at original screenplay at the Oscars, or John Batista's score can come along as like a solo type nomination, because his score is pretty phenomenal. But now let's dive into the first movie of today's docket. Alright, so I just saw The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, one of Netflix's documentaries for this documentary season, and I've always find it pretty hard to kind of discuss a documentary feature that isn't overtly stylistic, because you're watching someone else's life story. You don't want to be overtly critical or harsh, or you don't want to make generalizations about their life and the artistic way they went to go about showcasing it. But I found the most interesting aspect of this film to be that instead of relying on the age-old documentary trope of a talking head interview, they immerse you inside this World of Warcraft game that Ibelin spent most of his days in. The gameplay and the visuals and the animation are all very impressive, and they put you into the shoes of Ibelin, and you really get to see how he lived and how he expressed his true inner self that he couldn't do inside the real world. overall, it's not the most compelling or interesting documentary, but it will definitely have its fans out there, and you can find out if you'll be one of those fans on Netflix in like a week or so. But now it's time to dive into my last movie of this part of episode 3. Let's get it.
This is a very, very special film, and obviously it's a very important film. The director has had to flee Iran as a result of making this film and is now living in exile. And I think it's really great that it's being seen all over the world. And I'm really glad you guys are here to see it. I want to thank Neon for providing us with the film. They're going to release it later this year, so if you like it, please tell them you know.
All right, See the Sacred Fig. It's been watched, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I know Matt is going to be very upset with me. Did not really like this movie overall. I would say this is a grueling watch, and some people could read that as a positive. Some people could read that as a negative, and I think it works for both of those inside of this movie, because I found the first, let's say, hour of this film to be pretty riveting, and I feel like it accomplishes its goal of showcasing the atrocities and the horrors that are taking place in Iran. And when they use the real-life footage, what I assume at least is real-life footage, it's so effective, it's so grueling in a positive sense to watch. This stuff is going on, and people are just okay with it. People support that this happens. However, as I said, this movie is grueling also in a negative way, and it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. You feel every second of this film. And maybe that is the intention, but at least for me as a viewer, it was not a great feeling while watching this. I find that these performances are very well acted, but the characters themselves are so idiotic, and all of their character decisions are oftentimes just the most random and the most weird ones to make. And then I just find that their character decisions at times are just the most random, the most weird, the most stupid ones to make, just because it helps further the plot along. And then I want to give a shout out to Nico. I'm stealing his little pull quote here, but he described the third act twist as a Looney Tunes ass twist. And I have to agree with that, because for me at least, where this film goes into, the tone that it changes into, kind of undermines and undercuts the emotional weight and impact that the opening 2 hours had. And I think if this movie ended on a specific scene, it would have been so much more effective in its messaging and its communication, at least for me. I know obviously I'm kind of alone in this. This movie is praised, it's acclaimed, it won an award at Cannes. It's probably gonna get a lot of award nominations throughout the rest of the year. I just have to say, I'm underwhelmed and a little disappointed with it, but hey, I'm just one guy. It's just my opinions. But I want to end my thoughts on the Seed of the Sacred Fig on a positive note, because there is one specific scene in this movie. I'll call it "Where's the Gun" scene, and that is probably the scene of the entire Philadelphia Film Festival for me. Films I actually watched in the middle of the festival. The scene Nickel Boys probably goes above it, but in terms of films I actually watched here, that one would be it. So when we do the fancy Filmball Philadelphia Film Festival Awards, that will probably be taking that prize. So section 2 of episode 3, 2 kind of underwhelming films. Let's hope my final film tomorrow is a little bit more positive, but see you then. All right, last movie, Philadelphia Film Festival 2024. What is a better way to wrap up than a musical biopic about the one Robbie Williams? I'm American, so of course I don't know any of his music, but instead of being, a typical musical biopic, he's played by a monkey. I'm sold. Let's dive in.
I'm really glad you guys are here, because this is probably the most adventurous and maybe craziest movie we're showing at the festival. So I hope you can enjoy it. I'm not going to say too much else beforehand. Just enjoy the ride. Feel free to laugh, dance, sing, do whatever you need to do.
Fresh out of film number 10 for the festival, I guess technically 13, 14 overall, if you count everything I watched ahead of time. Better Man, which is a chaotic, crazy, and creative take on this musical biopic genre, just with the exception of, a very impressive visual effects ape in the lead role. I feel like Michael Gracie, world-renowned director from The Greatest Showman, kind of directs the hell out of this movie and puts a lot of creative flair into a film overall, I feel like it is really lacking in substance otherwise. He creates this avenue in this original one-of-a-kind experience to give world-famous international superstar Robbie Williams a one-of-a-kind, cathartic, and hopefully spiritual experience of a therapy session on the most unique stage of all time. Maybe it's festival burnout, maybe it's just the film didn't work very much for me, but I found the first half to have so much energy and was very engaging, and it really allowed Williams' life and creative juices as well as Gracie's direction to shine. But as the film kept going on, it felt like it really just dived into stereotypical basic biopic tropes that we've seen a million times over again, just this time, done with a visual effects ape, which was really cool. And the ape, as I said before, was very impressive and super creative. And I'm not going to go as far as Matt to say that this ape is better than any of the apes in Planet of the Apes, but it's a very great ape on its own. Maybe I was expecting more musical elements. Maybe I was expecting a little bit of a crazier tone, but this felt very toned down from as intense and as insane as you would think a film about Robbie Williams would be, and as how people have been selling this film online. It felt kind of like Bohemian Rhapsody, where you have those elements that you could say are towing the line and are borderline going into deeper elements of this artist's life story, but at the same time it's made by a major studio, and I don't know if it's a studio interference, I don't know if it's the only way to get funding or whatever. It just feels like it shies away from some more of those darker, richer elements of the story. But I have to say, I was entertained. I did find this fun, and it's one I would recommend to go watch. It just wasn't the one-of-a-kind greatest experience in the world as I was hoping. But as I said before, this was my last film, but it's not the last thing we have to talk about at this festival. I got one more little surprise for all of you out there. Welcome back. It's a few days later. I have been swamped with work since the end of this festival, but now it's time to dive into one of my favorite things about going to festivals every year, because you see Venice, you see Cannes, they give out jury awards, specific prizes to specific films, and you see so many films at a festival and you want to do the same thing. And I saw 13 films at this year's Philadelphia Film Festival, 3 of which I saw ahead of time, so why don't I give out some prizes regarding these films here? And the first one that we're going to start off with is Scene of the Festival. This one is kind of like an honorable mention award. It's a movie that I really couldn't find any spot to give in any of these other categories, but I still wanted to recognize because I did have a fun time while watching it. And the scene of the 2024 Philadelphia Film Festival would have to be Rock DJ from Better Man. And I just feel like Michael Gracie really nailed the tone and the style that I wanted from Better Man from top to bottom. This scene is oozing with energy. It's so charismatic. It's got that special Filmball word, pizzazz. And I just wish the whole film really embodied what this scene was going for, because this scene was a 10 out of 10. And now let's dive into the second award that I'm giving out for the Philadelphia Film Festival. And this one is going to be the Best Ensemble. And you may be surprised to hear that I'm giving this to Anora. And you may think, oh, Anora should be Best Picture. It should be Best Actress. It should be Best Screenplay. But to me, the true highlight of Anora is the ensemble, because I feel like every actor inside this film really nails what they're trying to go for. Mikey Madsen is fantastic in the leading role, but then the rest of this cast all is pretty phenomenal in their own right. Yuri Borisov, Mark Edelstein, and the rest of this cast all really nail the humor, the tone, and just the energy that you want out of a film like Anora. And for this next prize, it's one that I know a lot of people out there may have a little bit of a problem with my titling of it, but it's for Most Outstanding Animated Documentary International Feature, because sometimes at these festivals you may see one of each, but you may not see multiple of each. For example, here at Philadelphia, I did not see an animated film, so it would feel disingenuous to not have a prize for that. So that's why I'm lumping all 3 of these specialized film categories into one, and this year was really hard to pick which was my favorite animated documentary international feature. But I feel like for the sheer weight of the importance behind this film, how impactful that it was. And on its own right, this film is very engaging. I'm going to have to give it to No Other Land. I thought the way it goes about handling this whole Israeli-Palestine situation is very impactful. My sold-out screening here in Philadelphia was weeping by the end of this film, and I feel like it really nailed what it was trying to convey throughout its themes. Next up, we send it over to Best Screenplay, and this one was probably the film that would have won my Best International Feature Prize, but the screenplay here is so fun, it's so engaging, it has humor in each and every direction, and that has to be Dead Talent Society. I love how this film kind of blends in, and hear me out here, it's a really weird and wild combination of films, but it blends Monsters, Inc., it blends Beetlejuice, and it kind of also blends in the summer and Winter Olympics like broadcast feel. And at least to me, it did it in a very just engaging and humorous, and I just really like this film, and it's the film of the festival that I think furthest surpassed my expectations, as odd as that sounds. And with that being said, let's dive over to my outstanding supporting performance. And I have to say, the film overall that this is being represented by may have done the opposite of what Dead Talent Society did. It was probably the one that was most underwhelming to me. But the acting inside this film was really fantastic. And I think my favorite of this ensemble cast has to be Soheila Golestani from The Seed of the Sacred Fig. She plays the mother inside this film, and I feel like she perfectly blends comedy with horror with some very impactful and insightful dramatic scenes. And Better Man was the last film I saw at the festival. And before that, Fig, I was giving it the Scene of the Festival award because there's a certain scene in this film, I'm going to call it Where is the Gun sequence, where I feel like Golestani and the rest of this ensemble cast are all working in so much tandem and so effective. But I feel like Golestani just shines above the rest when you see the whole film. And now is when we kind of get into the hard awards to really divvy up. And this next one is to be for Outstanding Lead Performance, and it's to be Adrien Brody in The Brutalist. You can go back to my last episode and just hear me gush and rave about Brody's performance. If you're a fan of this channel, you know I am a sucker for Adrien Brody. I think he's one of the best actors we have working today, and he shows us why inside The Brutalist. He nails the dramatic scenes. He carries the weight of the world on his shoulders, and you can feel the horror and the atrocities that he has endured just from his physical attributes and his physical acting inside this film. And then oddly enough, The Brutalist is kind of a funny film too, and Adrien Brody is pretty funny with just some of his line deliveries and some of his mannerisms. And I mean, it's no secret, this film, it's 3.5 hours long. Adrien Brody is basically in front of the camera in every scene of the movie, and for the film to have to work, you need an actor who is so charismatic, who is so committed, who is so talented to carry the film, and Adrien Brody, he just does that for me. And now we're going to dive into achievement in directing, and there was only one person for this prize at the Philadelphia Film Festival. In fact, it was the first film I saw in all of the films here inside the festival. It's the Nickel Boys, it's Ramel Ross. His stylistic creativity behind the director's chair has me in awe. It's oozing of creativity, of originalness, of boldness. I love this choice of telling the story through this POV lens between two characters. You already heard me rave about his direction earlier inside the same video. So why don't we dive into the Best Feature Prize for the 2024 Philadelphia Film Festival, and it has to be Edward Berger's Focus Features Conclave. This film is so riveting, it's so thrilling. I was gripped to the edge of my seat from start to finish, and it's a film where maybe I personally didn't hold this belief. A lot of other people at the critic screening here in Philadelphia was like, why should we care about this film? It's a 2-hour PG movie about the election of a new pope inside the Vatican. How interesting, how intriguing could it be? And this film, it proved everybody wrong, because it's just the perfect thriller. I was absolutely hooked and love this film overall. I have seen 99 2024 releases so far, and Conclave is the only film from this festival to rank inside the top 10. That is a testament all upon its own. Conclave deserves the prize for Best Feature at the 33rd Annual Philadelphia Film Festival, and this has now been the second festival that I have done these fancy Filmball Awards for. Last year at the Virginia Film Festival, the previous recipient of the Best Feature prize was American Fiction. This time around, it's going to Conclave, and I'm very excited to see will be my best feature at the 2024 Virginia Film Festival. You want to make sure to subscribe because I head off to that festival in like 2 days. It's very soon. I'm seeing a lot of big name titles. I'm seeing Anora again, so we'll get even more in-depth conversation about the movie. Mikey Madsen will be there, so I'll have her Q&A attached in the video as well. I'm seeing Flow. I'm seeing The End. I'm seeing The Room Next Door. I can finally have my own opinion about, do I believe this is getting the best picture or it's just too mid, as a lot of other people like to call it out there. So like I said, consider subscribing down below. Leave a like on this video if you made it this far. It would mean a lot to me. It will help our channel continue to grow. Other people can see our festival and our awards coverage throughout the entirety of the season. But until next time, my name's Dill. This has been the 33rd Annual Philadelphia Film Festival, and thank you for watching Fantasy Filmball. Bye.